So at what point during an M&A transaction do you need to engage a CTO? Is it during day one or is it during due diligence? Today, we're going to unpack that answer. Hi, I'm Laura. This is a Q&A with the Fractional Agency, and I'm here today with Jaco to unpack what is a CTO and when does one need to get involved. Jaco, what's your thoughts?
Hi, Laura. Thank you. Great to be here. You asked, do they need to engage somebody on day one or beyond or in due diligence? I'd say it's probably earlier than that, especially on the sell side. A lot of the companies don't necessarily know what they have or what challenges they might face in due diligence or what needs to be fixed or value created before transaction. So it is rather than looking at the transaction event itself. And when you're stuck in due diligence and all of a sudden you need to respond to things, you want to be prepared for that. So it's being transaction ready, and not just the transaction itself, but making the business more sellable. So my advice would be for a small, medium organization, you want to engage a fractional CTO, CIO, probably 12 months before you intend to sell the business, so that they can help you get your technology strategy right that aligns and enables the business, not necessarily executing all the change. They'll help you understand what you're dealing with, where the shortcomings are, where the challenges might be. If there's going to be expectations of, so you've got AI, tell us about the traceability and auditability and the governance around it. You don't want to sit there and like, oh, but we've got AI without question. Or
Mm-hmm.
we've got data. Sure, now we'll do analysis on your sales pipeline and your production environment, your supply chain. We're going to look at all that data, and then it doesn't correlate with what is in the financials. So you want to get somebody in advance to get you in shape to be able to answer those challenging questions, but to also get a good environment already, so that when you get into transaction, you can just run beyond it.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't just hold back and think after the transaction is another day, then we'll deal with it.
Mm.
It's about being prepared rather than being reactive.
Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And so that was very much from the side of the sell side. So what do you think about from the buy side perspective?
Probably equally so. And it depends on the type of organizations making the acquisition. If it's a large corporate that's doing a strategic acquisition and they expect to just absorb a new smaller entity into what they've got, uh, they may very well have a landing state and have the leadership, the technology and business leadership there. However, that's not always the case. I've been involved in several transactions where it was helping them define what appropriate landing state needs to be and getting their systems in place. So similar to the sell side, needing to be ready 12 months before, a large corporate making acquisitions need to do the same. You don't want to acquire something and then trying to figure out, okay, we've got to integrate this business. We want to realize synergies already. We want to make savings. We want that business to accelerate. We want to create value from day one. And you can't do that if you've got fragility sitting underneath it. So you want to be prepared again to acquire and integrate effectively. Otherwise, you're going to start erode value from day one. You're not going to be able to operate that business, and that business isn't going to be able to operate with you. Probably two more scenarios where it is originally, let's say, owner operated and owned business at a reasonable size, mid-market, gets acquired by a private equity fund. All of a sudden, the dynamic changed dramatically. And the PE fund will have demands and expectations on this new business. And they may very well then engage CTO operating partners, a lot of times on a fractional basis, to
Mm-hmm.
take on leadership and drive that business and technology modernization or more fit for future business. So it may not necessarily be the business themselves
Hmm.
that was sold that gets the fractional CTO in. It may be a dictate from the new fund or
Company.
investors, or they will tell the company, you need to get somebody in because you will need help.
Hmm.
And it may very well be, if you're prepared in advance, you may have a bit more continuity in that, which is very, very helpful. I've sat in a similar scenario where companies got me in early,
Hmm.
they were prepared, and from the private equity fund, they just said, you look like you're in good shape, you've got a clear strategy, there's a roadmap,
Hmm.
there's stability. Yes, we'll provide funding because that's part of that pre-transaction readiness. Do
Yeah.
you know where the investment needs to be? How much will you need?
Mm.
And then make it so.
Hmm.
And in the third scenario around buy and build strategies, and that usually originates either from a fund that acquires a single entity or where it is um, a business starts to acquire an adjacent competitor potentially, and you start to get into a buy and build strategy, be it localized, nationalized, international. And there you want to create an environment that, or what's a platform
Hmm.
that everybody can operate consistently, seamlessly, and at scale.
Hmm.
And without having the proper technology leadership to support the business in that vision, you're likely to just operate these new acquisitions in isolation rather than to create a combined entity that harmoniously work together.
Hmm.
So
And
again, day one or before.
yeah, and I think that's one of the things that you said a moment ago, and the thread that kind of went through of what you just said. It's about getting you future ready as much as anything. Like whether once you've bought an organization or if you're at the start of doing your buy and build journey and you want to be the platform, it's making sure you've got that long term strategic thinking around how are we going to operate this so that we don't end up having lots of independently run organizations that don't talk to one another.
All.
Yeah, nobody
That's
wants that.
so in all cases, it's being ready.
Yeah.
If then absolutely needed and you neglected to do so during due diligence because you
Hmm.
want to, if you're on the buy side, you want to have that expertise to help you with technology due diligence because it is so, so important. It's neglected for years, but it's
Hmm.
becoming very prominent, especially with AI in the mix everywhere, that you want to make sure what you have works. It's verifiable. It's not going to break the business. It's not going to cost you an arm and a leg the moment you start to
Hmm.
use it in great ego for everybody. You want to make sure what you get does not introduce fragility and erode value quicker than it creates.
And one last question for you. What would you say to a business owner who has perhaps got an IT manager in place who's running business as usual? They have only a small number of systems within the organization, perhaps a CRM, maybe they've got a HRIS type system. They've obviously got your Microsoft, your Google, your emails, however they're communicating. But beyond that, they don't have much else, but they are still about to acquire another business and bolt them on.
So in those scenarios, the IT manager or IT director, whatever the title might be, looks at day-to-day business as usual IT management, not necessarily taking a strategic technology for the entire business and how it needs to enable the business to drive operational efficiencies, create new revenue streams. That's not necessarily their focus. Very rarely it's their focus. But there's another factor that operating on a day-to-day basis, business as usual is nearly stable state with exceptions,
Mm-hmm.
but a transaction and an M&A strategy drives a whole different dynamic. You're putting the business in turmoil in basically a constant state of transformation. And that's very different dealing with adding new systems and maintaining that, or upgrading a system to a new version,
Mm-hmm.
to now I need to all of a sudden, they may very well, in a lot of cases, acquire something that's bigger than themselves and comes with systems and processes and people and data that they've never dealt with before. And you now need to navigate around that. That is not business as usual. And therefore, you require somebody with expert experience, and I'd say expert hands-on experience in that M&A scenario, not just adding new systems or associated change.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jaco, for answering that.